IRQL not less or equal. If you've owned a Windows PC long enough, this is probably the one you've actually seen with your own eyes. It's the single most common blue screen there is. IRQL stands for Interrupt Request Level, a priority system Windows uses to decide which hardware signal gets handled first. Every driver and process is only allowed to touch certain memory at certain priority levels. This error means a driver reached for memory it had no business touching at that priority level, like an intern walking into the CEO's office demanding files way above their clearance. Windows doesn't negotiate, it just shuts the whole building down. The tell: it almost always shows up right after you plug in new hardware or install a fresh driver, especially Wi-Fi adapters and network cards. Page fault in non-paged area. Windows splits memory into two categories: stuff that can be temporarily swapped out to your hard drive when it's not needed, and stuff that has to stay physically in RAM at all times because the system might need it instantly. That second category is the non-paged area. This error fires when Windows reaches for something in that non-paged area, and it's just not there. The tell: if it happens randomly with no obvious pattern, a specific app, a specific action, suspect a failing RAM stick before anything else. System service exception. This happens when a system service, code running with serious kernel-level privileges, throws an error Windows can't catch. The usual suspects are graphics drivers right after an update, or security software that hooks itself deep into the kernel to monitor everything happening on your PC. Keep that second one in the back of your mind. It's going to come back in a big way by the end of this list. The tell: check what you installed or updated in the last 24 hours. That's your first suspect almost every time. K-mode exception not handled. Kernel mode is the part of Windows with zero safety net. User apps can crash and Windows just closes them, but kernel mode code crashes and it takes the whole system with it. This is exactly that, an unhandled exception in kernel mode. Almost always a driver you just installed or updated that isn't playing nice with your hardware. That's 4 codes in a row, and every single one traces back to a driver overstepping its boundaries. That's not a coincidence. It's that 70% stat from the intro playing out in real time. But not every blue screen is about drivers. Some of them are about Windows itself, losing something it needed to survive. Critical process died. A handful of Windows processes are load-bearing. The whole operating system leans on them staying alive. If one of them dies, Windows doesn't try to keep going without it, it just stops. Causes range from corrupted system files and malware to a botched Windows update interrupted at the wrong moment. And yes, sometimes it's just you, digging through Task Manager, ending what looked like a random background process that turned out to be load-bearing after all. The tell: if it follows right after a Windows update, blame the update before you blame yourself. Memory management. Not a driver this time. This is Windows' own internal memory manager hitting a fault. Most of the time that points straight at your RAM. A failing stick, memory running at the wrong speed for your motherboard, or a driver quietly corrupting memory addresses it shouldn't be touching. The tell: Windows actually ships a free built-in tool for exactly this, Windows Memory Diagnostic, worth running before you buy new RAM. Driver IRQL not less or equal. Basically the twin of error code number 1, same priority level violation, except this time Windows can specifically point the finger and say, it was a driver. Printer drivers and older Wi-Fi cards show up in this one constantly. The tell: this is one of the rare ones where the crash screen usually names the exact driver file responsible, so you don't even have to guess. System thread exception not handled. A driver runs its own background thread, and that thread crashes with an error Windows has no way to catch. This is the classic "I just updated my graphics driver and now my PC crashes" error. Fresh GPU drivers, especially right after a big release, are one of the single most common triggers for this exact code. The tell: if it started the same day you updated your graphics driver, roll that driver back first. Video TDR failure. TDR stands for Timeout Detection and Recovery. Windows acting like a babysitter for your graphics card. If your GPU stops responding within a set time window, Windows assumes it's frozen and force resets it. And when that reset fails, you get this. Real causes: an unstable GPU overclock, a corrupted graphics driver, or a card that's simply overheating under load. The tell: if it only happens during gaming or rendering and never while the PC is idle, that's your overheating or overclocking answer right there. 9 codes down. Notice something? Every single cause so far has been something running on your PC, a driver, a piece of software, memory Windows manages. Starting now, That changes, because the next two are about Windows not being able to find your PC's own hard drive in the first place. Inaccessible boot device. This hits before Windows has even finished waking up. It means the system reached the point in startup where it needs to grab files off your boot drive, and it literally cannot find or reach that drive. Common triggers. Switching your SATA mode in BIOS from AHCI to RAID after Windows is already installed, cloning a drive incorrectly, or a missing storage controller driver. The tell. If it shows up right after a BIOS change or a fresh Windows install, that setting is almost always the answer. Unmountable boot volume. Slightly different problem. Windows can see the boot drive is there this time. It just can't read the file system data on it. Bad sectors, a sudden power loss mid-write, or a drive that's straight up failing are the usual causes. The tell, a drive that throws this repeatedly, isn't asking for a fix, it's asking to be replaced. Back your data up first, troubleshoot second. Bad pool header. Drivers borrow small chunks of kernel memory called pools to do their work, and each chunk starts with a little header of bookkeeping information. This error means that header got corrupted 9 times out of 10 because a driver wrote data outside the boundaries it was actually given. The tell. Same as error 7, the crash file will usually name the exact driver at fault. Bad system config info. Windows keeps a registry and boot configuration database that tells it how to start up and how the system is set up. This error means that data got corrupted or went missing, usually tracing back to a Windows update that got interrupted, a sudden power loss during a system change, or someone manually editing the registry and getting a little too confident. The tell. If it followed an interrupted update or a forced shutdown, you've already found your cause. 13 down, 7 to go. And so far, almost every one of these has been Windows catching a software problem before it could do real damage. That changes right here. From this point on, some of these codes aren't software issues at all. They're your actual hardware waving a white flag. WHEA, uncorrectable error. WHEA stands for Windows Hardware Error Architecture, essentially the operating system's built-in hardware health monitor. This code means your actual hardware reported a fault it couldn't fix on its own. Real causes: an overheating CPU, an unstable overclock, a failing power supply, or hardware that's simply dying. The tell. Check your temperatures before anything else. This one loves a CPU that's cooking. Machine check exception. Modern CPUs run their own internal self-diagnostics constantly, and this is what happens when the processor's own circuitry flags a fatal internal error. This is about as close to your hardware just admitted defeat as a blue screen gets. Usually a failing or overheating CPU or unstable voltage from an aggressive overclock. The tell. If your system is overclocked at all, that's the first thing to undo. Data bus error. The data bus is the literal physical pathway. Data travels down between your CPU, your RAM, and the rest of the motherboard. This error is a parity failure on that pathway, almost always bad or failing RAM, occasionally a dying motherboard component. The tell. Same free tool as error 6, Windows Memory Diagnostic. This is basically always a RAM problem in disguise. The last 4 codes on this list don't fit neatly into driver or hardware. They're the weird ones, the ones that catch people off guard because the actual cause makes no sense until you hear it. DPC watchdog violation. DPC stands for Deferred Procedure Call. Tasks drivers queue up to run a little later. Windows has a watchdog timer that keeps an eye on how long those tasks take, and if one runs too long, the watchdog assumes something's frozen and kills the system to prevent damage. In the real world, this is overwhelmingly a storage problem. Outdated SSD or NVMe firmware, or an outdated storage controller driver. The tell. If your PC randomly blue screens and you've never touched your BIOS, check your SSD's firmware page before anything else. It's the single most common cause. NTFS file system. This is Windows' own file system driver, hitting an error while reading or writing to your drive. Disk corruption. A failing hard drive or SSD or a damaged file system table are the usual explanations. The tell. Windows has a built-in repair tool made specifically for this, CHKDSK. Run it before you assume the worst. Clock watchdog timeout. Every core in your CPU has to answer a kind of roll call on a strict schedule. If one core misses it, Windows assumes that core has frozen solid and crashes the whole system, rather than risk corrupting your data. This one has a very specific reputation. It is overwhelmingly caused by CPU overclocking pushed a little too far, with outdated BIOS or chipset firmware as the other repeat offender. The tell: if you're overclocked, reset to default first. That alone resolves most cases. APC index mismatch. APC stands for asynchronous procedure call. Background bookkeeping. A driver has to enable and disable in the correct order. This error means a driver messed up that sequence. And this is where it gets genuinely funny. This specific code became infamous for being triggered by outdated Realtek audio drivers. Thousands of PCs blue-screened, and the actual cause traced back to people's headsets and webcam microphones. The tell: check your audio driver before anything else. Sometimes the villain isn't your graphics card or your RAM, it's whatever's plugged into your 3.5mm jack. That's all 20 codes. But 2 blue screens on this list aren't error messages at all, they're moments. And they might be the 2 most consequential blue screens in the history of computing. Comdex 1998. April 1998. Bill Gates is on stage at Comdex in Chicago, live, in front of thousands of people, demoing the brand new plug-and-play feature in the not-yet-released Windows 98. His assistant plugs in a scanner to show how effortlessly Windows can just recognize new hardware. The PC blue screens instantly live, on the big screen, in front of the entire audience. Gates barely misses a beat and jokes that this must be why they're not shipping Windows 98 yet. The room loses it. That clip has been replayed for over 25 years, and it's still one of the most watched tech fails in history. Microsoft reportedly built an entire dedicated demo testing room after this, specifically so it would never happen on stage again. CrowdStrike, July 2024. Remember system_service_exception, code number 3 on this list, the one caused by security software running deep in the kernel? This is that exact error at a scale nobody had ever seen before. On July 19, 2024, cybersecurity company CrowdStrike pushed a routine content update to their Falcon security software, which runs with kernel-level access on millions of Windows machines. The update contained a logic error, and because it was running in kernel mode, it didn't just crash an app, it took the entire operating system down with it. Roughly 8.5 million Windows devices blue-screened, some stuck in a boot loop that wouldn't stop. Airports grounded flights, banks and supermarkets went offline. Hospitals and 911 systems were disrupted. It's estimated to have cost Fortune 500 companies over $5 billion in a single day. One faulty file, running with too much trust, on too many machines, all at once. That's every code on this list, just multiplied by a few million. Every one of those blue screens traces back to something on your PC overstepping its boundaries. Turns out your router's doing the same kind of silent troubleshooting right in front of you. Every port and every light means something, and I broke down all of it right here.